perfectly articulated the meaning of life too, but oh well.
Yeah, it was so fascinating that it came out of examining 1933 Nazi Germany. That's it.
Sorry about that, all. Well, we'll see what happens.
All you're optimistic.
Yeah, it says one watching. So, oh, there we go. Now we can hear ourselves. Shall we start over?
Yeah.
Sorry about that, all.
We got this. Don't worry, everybody.
All right.
Oh yeah, forget you can't yell around this mic.
Oh, you
This
just
mic
can't
is
pound
really
the table.
good.
I know, I've already done it once tonight.
All right. So, welcome to.
You should give me like a
just let
so I
me
can
start.
tap.
All right. As soon as that kicks in, we'll consider this take 2 of the Napa Jordan Peterson podcast.
Oh, let's just keep going, or I don't know. Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Right.
So yeah, we'll start over.
Well, I guarantee you, even though we're starting over, we're not going to end up with the same conversation no matter how hard we try.
Yeah.
So we're Napa Jordan Peterson podcast. We're a Napa Jordan Peterson meetup that meets once a week. And we like to take the best ideas from that conversation and kind of bring them to a public forum, which is what we're doing here. I have Dallas with me and Arthur. All right. So we started off by trying to watch the Munk debate with Michelle Goldberg, Michael Dyson, Jordan Peterson, Stephen Fry, and we got a couple of sentences of Dyson, and somehow we ended up on the topic of education. And we started arguing, about, what's the best way to educate someone or communicate. And Dallas, you're saying was facts-based. And I said, well, it's definitely not feelings-based. It'd probably be better if you had facts and feelings intertwined like a narrative. And then, Arthur, you talked about was the NF...
Nonviolent communication.
Yeah, nonviolent communication. Thank you.
NVC, nonviolent communication.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, it kind of includes facts and feelings. It's a 4-step process for helping people talk to each other better. It's starting out with observations, just sort of what are the facts, what words were actually spoken or what actions were actually done without subjective judgments, and then acknowledging the feelings that arise in that situation. And the most important step is the observations and the feelings are just a way of helping us identify what more fundamental needs are not being met in that situation. And then there's a 4th step, requests, based on that. So observations, feelings, needs, and requests, with needs being kind of the key to it all.
And you also...
I think in our first take, I asked Dallas what his needs may have been behind his emphasis on the importance of facts. And you said communication, right?
Effective communication.
Yeah, and on the nonviolent communication list, there's one particular need called shared reality, which we also thought was probably part of that, part of what was driving your insistence on the need for facts.
Yeah.
On your obsession with facts, that was.
Well, I guess when you put it that way, shared reality would be like a product. But I guess then my insistence would be that it's just more effective. It's just more effective.
But effective can only mean something in terms of the need that's being met, right?
For any need, I'm saying it's a principle. But like across the board, any need, you would be more likely to meet a need effectively.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I see. So effectiveness itself.
Right. Yeah.
More effective if there's a shared reality?
Facts.
Or shared facts?
Yeah,
definitely. That could be a hard thing in communication, right? If everyone's got a different label for something, and it's a lot easier for me to use the labels in my head than to use the labels in your head. So trying to get everything labeled correctly just to have that shared experience and be able to communicate about it.
That's true. It's interesting. I like your insistent, or this is an interesting idea. I haven't thought about the idea that the facts are like labels and definitions. I guess that's true too. I think I was thinking more just like the pure observations or evidence and facts, but yeah, you would build those into definitions and mutual understanding.
Yeah, almost like your own shorthand, so to speak, to talk about this group of sequence of events. Because it's not like you keep like a minute by minute or second by second account of this, then this, then this. No, he's just like, no, Dallas reached over.
Yeah.
And that implies everything that happened before Dallas reached over, and there's a lot of implication in our language that we have to leave out, because if we were to communicate every single fact we're referencing, we would be so verbose. And it's like, no, we only have a little bit of time to communicate a lot, and it's interesting that language optimizes for a certain amount over time. That's another interesting thing about language. Studied, not studied,
more
but
about
read.
that. What, it optimizes over time. What do you mean?
Yeah, there's like language. So like English, for example, we come up with all sorts of colloquialisms or short couple phrases that mean a lot more, and as we use them more often, we change our language, and so there are contractions, so to speak, that shorten two words that we use constantly. There's just like this desire to be able to communicate effectively and efficiently, but that also means it needs to be terse yet precise. The sign of a bad communicator is like, when people keep saying, because they're not really finishing that thought, or they're grasping for vocabulary. A more articulate person will have those cliches or whatever to drop in there to help communicate a better feeling or an idea or a set of facts.
Yeah, interesting.
And then you were mentioning about sacrifices in our first take too. Remember how that was connected?
Let's see. I was saying that sacrifice is something you have to constantly do, and that was because you were talking about getting shared meaning or resolving issues is something that is never done, which seems to be. You were saying that it's a frustration. It seems to be a frustration of modern peoples that they resolve an issue, but then they have to re-resolve it later, and that might be that's like a frustration people face, I guess.
Yeah, we were talking about investigating existing issues over and over again, and a lot of people feel that's a waste of time. But I think Peterson's trying to explain that we constantly got to re-examine everything, no matter how foundational it is. And it's kind of scary to investigate anything foundational, because you might have all these thoughts and facts and ideas connected above that foundational piece, and to shake that piece or remove it could bring that whole tower down. And I really like Peterson because it's talking about examining like everyone's little tower and all their thoughts, and nothing's sacred, so to speak. We can all talk about it, and it goes back to the group a little bit. It's like, it's so weird because there are so many different paths out there. We have to kind of share with each other to figure out what paths are valid and make sense, and which just don't make any sense at all. And there's so many that don't make sense, and very few that do. And it's interesting too, because we have our blind spots. So someone can construct a completely set different tower, so to speak, of all ideas and facts together with their blind spot, and they can connect things that I can never have because I have my own blind spots. But yeah, I think you were talking about sacrifices, and I think it also makes me think of the label thing too. Like, I have to sacrifice and use your terms to communicate in the shared experience, so that we can have that shared experience and that communication, that effective communication. It takes a little work and extra effort. And that's what makes me think of sacrifice.
And willingness too. It takes willingness, which is another mystery. Where does that come from? Because I think part of the problem with miscommunication is it's very pleasurable. So hatred and condemnation are very pleasurable.
It's like venting, right? When you're hating somebody, you're just yelling at them, and you're getting it off your chest, all the feelings.
It feels really good in a way. I mean, at least momentarily. So, and it can be very addictive too.
Well, and sometimes it's like passive aggressive when it's like you're not even mad at the person you're unloading on. It's coming from other things you didn't address.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it can feel very good to vent, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's one thing I like about the internet, is it gives everyone a place to vent their anger in some way. It's better that we don't do it in person or to our families and loved ones. Unfortunately, I think they get the brunt of it. The people we spend the most time with, whether that's friends or. But they love us all the same. I mean, that's maybe another advantage. I don't know.
What are we talking about?
Well, we were talking about education and communications and shared experience. Did you have any additional thoughts?
I don't know. I guess that's I'm pro education.
Pro shared experience.
But the thing, I think we were talking about histories too. So what is the I mean, it's everyone says they're pro education, but the what is it that you're actually teaching? The content of it
Right.
is it's difficult to know what the facts are,
Mm-hmm.
and which facts are important and which are not important, and which facts are even which questions should even be asked. You know, that's the thing too. It's like what questions should or should not be asked.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were being raised in 1940 Germany, if you're, the education system there would be, they'd be asking questions that to them seemed important about races, right? Different kinds of races and superiority, inferiority, stuff like that. And that's a question I wouldn't even ask. It's not meaningful to me. But so what questions? I think that's why I was pushing back on the idea that facts are important, but
they're not everything.
They're like way less than everything. They're just like they're a small part of our understanding of the world and how, especially how we make meaning. Because I think we're also talking about something Peterson does mention. We come into the world with a whole bunch of patterns already set, meaning-making patterns. So, like he says, everything is a tool to us. So we're not really seeing the world as it is. We're seeing it as it's useful to us. So I forgot what that has to do with anything. But
I can give one example of a pattern that's built into us. It's like snakes. Our optical systems are highly optimized. So when we see a snake, we already a fight or flight mode.
Right.
So there's definitely clearly patterns that are innate in all of us.
Yeah, and faces. We're trained to see faces, so we see faces in leaves and shadows and everything. There's Mother Mary's appearing all around the world because people are built to see faces, and built to see built to see or sense agency behind things too. Like if there's a rustle in the grass, it's something is trying to get us, as opposed to just something completely non-conscious is happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the meaning or like the narrative to the facts, it helps us remember too, because there's so many. Like I said, there's like a second per second like log of events and facts that gather up, and it's hard to remember it all. So we have to kind of store in our brain these shorthands, and it's easier to remember actions when they're coupled with meanings. What it meant to us when he reached for that.
Yeah.
That's what's different about the situation, because a specific person can reach for something 1,000 times in your lifetime, but each time they did it, it has different meaning. You remember why they reached for it, right? That you either prescribe an intent maybe or something. It just makes it something about a story is more memorable than just a list of what happened.
I think Peterson at one point said he himself wasn't really sure if what he's doing is sort of the ultimate attack on religion, or if it's like reviving religion. I wish I could remember his quote, but it's something to that effect. Because I think properly understood, what he's saying certainly is an attack on anything even remotely towards the fundamentalist spectrum of religion, because he's kind of making the point that they're not facts. There was no Adam and Eve, and there was no flood. I mean, he doesn't say that. He just leaves it open, but that's not the meaning. The meaning is not. It has nothing to do with the facts, whether these things happened or not. Have nothing to do with the meaning.
Yeah, I think it's great because he says, "Well, ignore whether it happened or not. Let's process what is this information saying."
Yeah.
And is it metaphysical? Is it something that we find true in our own lives?
Right.
And I think he lays out story by story about these patterns in the Bible, or all these common things that happen around us, whether it's Adam and Eve in the garden to Cain and Abel. Why do I keep getting bad luck? It's that whole story. I think, or is that Abraham's son? I forget. Not too verse the story, but the point is there's all these stories, and he says if you don't look whether they happened or not, if you ignore that minutia and focus on the patterns in them, there is great great wisdom. Like there's this the story it's telling that are linking this pattern and if you take that in and you can utilize the pattern, and it helps you form your attitude and mindset about why things are the way they are, and it helps you communicate how you can. I say attitude. How do you can interpret that to live a better life? But that comes, I think, through an attitude. How do you handle these different situations in a way that not only uplifts yourself, but it uplifts others, and by return, that uplifts you.
Yeah, I mean the sort of the working assumption tends to be in Peterson's work that whatever has led up to now has value of some sort, probably survival value to some degree. I mean, I don't think he himself would push that too far, and I don't think it is completely true, but there's something to that, the idea that whatever we've inherited up to now, well, since we exist now, we've survived this far, so you don't necessarily just throw it all out. You just say, okay, well, maybe there's a reason why this is the way things are.
Yeah, it's just someone's kicking the foundational bricks, and Peterson's re-exploring that with us and showing us, well, maybe we do need to hang on these ideas from religion, and maybe they do need to be told in stories instead of in history books, so to speak. I mean, even history books kind of tell a story, even though they're not supposed to, right?
Definitely tell a story. Big stories, yeah.
So it's an effective tool that needs to be respected, and I think it's just we're just re-exploring and re-finding that out and putting modern language on why it's important and why we need to bring that forward with us. And there's plenty in there we need to throw out. There's plenty of verbiage and plenty of passages. I remember in the meeting on Thursday you were talking about one sect of Catholicism takes a certain package and they spin it one way, or they believe it was one way, and then another sect of Catholicism just ignores that, or
it was it was, I guess, an example of how interpretation is so wide open. So even something as fundamental as genocide, which is kind of universally condemned, and yet it's one of the major themes of the Bible. I mean, the character or the personage or character of God in the Bible repeatedly, insists that his people commit genocide over and over and over again. They're commanded to, and then when they don't, they're even punished for not doing it. And so that's interesting in and of itself. So what is the meaning there? I mean, is it? And so in Catholicism, there's some completely condemn that. And they even the commentary in the Bible itself, in one of the Catholic Bibles, a commentary on one of those passages says that this is not in accord with the will of God, which is quite something for the Roman Catholic Church to say about Scripture. So Scripture is saying over and over again, God said to wipe out all these people, and this particular current in Catholic thinking says that that's a lie about God. So the Scripture is quite clearly lying about God according to that current of Catholic thought. But there's the more fundamentalist side of Catholic thought that believes, that believes it's important to insist upon the inerrancy of Scripture, that the Scripture can't be wrong. So those people find ways to justify the genocide. They find their arguments have to support the morality of genocide. As when God commands it, and you can't. I mean, I can't really even imagine a more stark abyss between two worldviews and two understandings of how to understand a passage in the Bible. So I wonder what Peterson would make of that major pattern in the Bible, the need to wipe out people.
Well, and it's interesting because it shows two different belief systems. They have this commonality of this fact they're trying to resolve, and I think we talked about in the group too how the human mind, we have this huge system in our head for rationalizing things. We can come up with an excuse for just about anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, what touched on the facts part of it, and the exploration. Like we need the facts to anchor it in, and we need the exploration to see and seek the truth and find the rot. Where what's going to make sense moving forward? Do we want genocide? Does it ever make any sense to have genocide? It's a tough question. It's not an immediate no. I think there's obviously Hitler thought one way and everyone else thinks another. You'd think, but
well, I think there's no connection between facts and meaning. Facts can't give us meaning or moral judgment or right and wrong. As far as I can see it, there's nothing about any fact that can help us determine right or wrong.
Facts and relationship the facts and meaning can have relationships, but they're right. They're not directly linked. They're not. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Where does meaning come from? It doesn't come from any single fact, as far as I can tell.
And like you said, a lot of it's innate and put in us, and the other stuff we have these different voices in our head have different values that we struggle with and to figure out. And it's interesting because they're malleable, because I can listen to other people's perspectives and change my opinion.
Right.
And that's obviously affecting probably one or more voices in my head, so to speak. So it's going to take those sides to communicate and have that common language to be able to work through and have that discussion, because these are age-old questions that aren't simple answers, that this conversation just needs to continue.
But as you said, these are foundational conversations, so that unless you're kind of going in willing to have your entire world turned upside down and inside out, in my opinion, you're not looking for the truth.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think people can still, tippy-toe in. But overall, from where I see it anyway, it's like, unless you're willing to completely give up every single thought you've ever had, you're not looking for the truth.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time arguing for, listening to why genocide might be good. I mean, that just sounds like a tough thing to talk about. It seems like a waste of time in some ways, but it's the truth though. Unless we're open to looking at everything, then either I'm going to be more sure of my position or even less secure if I don't listen to the outside opinions. Or at least I could develop a high resolution where I could know the certain cases where it's okay and it's not okay. You can almost get like a more refined morality or sense of right and wrong by exploring it even. And I think that's the tough thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's fascinating in the Roman Catholic. I mean, people out there are going to think I'm Catholic. I'm not Catholic, so I'm not speaking authoritatively about this. But in the Roman Catholic Catechism, it says, that it says quite explicitly that any act taken to exterminate an entire people is a sin and contrary to the will of God, and even if you're following commands. So it's startling, because they're describing exactly the Old Testament. I mean, that's exactly the situation. So it's just kind of amazing. To my opinion, there's already been an earthquake, and they just haven't recognized it yet. So the pillars of the Vatican have already fallen to the ground, in my opinion. They're good, done, and yet they just haven't quite recognized it.
It makes me think of the Bible it's not just all written at once, right? It's a collection of stories over time. So it's almost had this intent to, maybe not from the beginning, but it has to be revised. It has to be translated to be brought into modern times and language. And then all these points of translation, and people like to go back to certain points and cherry pick and justify certain things for the rationalization. But I think what's happened with our technology is we got into a point in time where we're able to lock the Bible into writing. And so these stories that used to mutate and transform all of a sudden stopped transforming and mutating as much. And so we take them so literally now, and we kind of stopped updating them. And I think it's really cool. I like how Peterson brings it into the light so we can start exploring and expanding on it, because there are things there worth saving. I think Peterson makes a very clear case for that. But there's plenty that we need to revise and change and drop and not take it so literal. And that's exactly what happened. We need to see it what it is and why it's important to bring forward with us.
That's why his attack on postmodernism is so strange, because it's postmodernism is not the bogeyman that he makes it out to be. It's basically just saying what we're saying now. It's like, okay, well, we've inherited these patterns from the past. Let's look at them and let's understand them. That's kind of my understanding. And so it's odd.
Yeah, well,
because it's a necessary thing to be able to look at these things and possibly throw them out.
Yeah, and postmodernism is kind of like relativism, right? Where you can say, well, it's all relative to a certain degree in certain situations. But there is, I think that's like the beginning point. Like, we need to examine everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's all these different things we do. But as you actually go down the road of it, I think Peterson makes a pretty clear case that we can use our solar plexus and other methods to really figure out that there is valid paths and invalid paths. So why everything is relative and equally important in some degree, there are only some things that can have enough gravitas to build on, so to speak. And I think that's the interesting intersection.
So education, so meaning, right? That's kind of what we were talking about. You guys are kind of talking about meaning, where it comes from, and
we were saying,
so going back to education. So
we don't need no.
There's sort of okay. Well, I guess my first question then is, we have to figure out where meaning comes from first, because that's kind of what I hear. But to me, that sort of is my logical system. I know we talked about this yesterday, or on Thursday.
Yeah.
We have logical systems. So that's my logical system. That doesn't come first. So that's because as you're reading, as you're learning history, right? The meaning comes out of what you're looking at, and the evidence is the stuff you see and hear, right? So
I think I would say the evidence is what can anchor the meaning. It's like a checks and balance, right? You could feel a certain way about that, but without the facts to anchor it, it could go off into delusion.
I think anchor is not a good metaphor for what we're using here.
Okay.
I think maybe it was the foundation is better.
Okay.
So you're building a house, right?
Yeah.
So maybe because you're kind of saying that evidence and feelings would be like optimal, right?
Yeah, together. You want to intertwine them, and because you don't want feelings without evidence. Then, like I said, you go off delusions.
So my thinking is that feelings would be like the house, and evidence would be the foundation.
Okay.
And so I'm guessing you're saying you're going to use evidence and feelings to give yourself meaning, to the meaning you take away from it, whether it's in you from when you're born or it's coming from somebody else teaching it. So the meaning is going to come afterward. So the evidence or the observations and the feelings are going to come before the meaning.
I don't think so. It's kind of like if you look at different species. I mean, we're born human, so and we're born with a whole set of wants and desires and capabilities, even, right? So we can learn language, and a robin can't. But Robin knows how to find the worm, right? And we wouldn't know how to do that. And so that's important to the robin. And so, I mean, what you are.
I understand that, but I think that's different. I think that's different.
Okay.
Because when you're going to study, a book like let's say the Bible, right? The Bible, I guess maybe it is in you. Is that you're saying you don't? Because when you read let's say you read Genesis, you're going to read it and you're going to walk away with a meaning.
But. And I think. You have
but I agree that there is meaning in you before you read it. But I'm talking about education.
Yeah, but everyone's going to be... See, in other words, the question is, so why is everyone coming away with a different meaning then? What's determining that?
Because we do have...
But wait, why does that matter? Because if you stop to solve that question before you learn, wouldn't it be... That's what I'm saying. My logical system says... It's better to have people learning and taking away bad meanings than it is to have them not learning at all.
I would agree with that.
But what are you learning? I mean, if you're not learning the right stuff, then...
But just in general, it doesn't matter.
Other perspectives.
Just a
other
very
potential paths.
A very reductionist viewpoint. Learning bad stuff is better than learning no stuff.
I would agree with that.
I mean, that's kind of a low resolution. So I mean, unpack that for me because I don't know what that means.
Well, I have to go low.
In other words, that could mean a lot of different things.
No, I
Well,
understand, but if you're going to say that it's the stuff a priori, it's in us before,
Yes.
we
Some
have to go
things-
low resolution
well,
because that's the lowest resolution.
Some values are innate.
Yeah.
Some values are commonly innate.
Right.
Not all innate values are common, though, right? We have
Right,
rare
right.
innate values.
Mhm.
There's a set of genetics, which we get from our parents, and then a set from the environment, too. So we're the mixture of innate and non-innate.
So that's why I have to go low resolution because it's too complicated. Because I'm just talking about education
Okay.
and learning. Because that's kind of how we got off on this, was talking about learning history,
Mm-hmm.
right? And learning histories. And actually, the Bible is a great example of a history document. Yeah.
Well,
So
no,
if you're
no,
gonna,
no,
so
but
should-
even
if you're
is
going
it
to learn
history?
from that,
But even that. So.
yeah, but so that's why I'm going low resolution because forget the Bible then. Just anything. Learning anything is better than learning nothing.
But I think that's a straw
that
man.
means
No one's
nothing to me.
Yeah,
That
I don't
statement
think.
means nothing to me.
But you have to agree that learning something is better than learning nothing.
No, I don't. Even
I guess,
begin,
yeah, I
I don't
can
even
see
begin
that.
to. Nothing in me says yes to that.
Gotcha.
Okay, so then I would say it's better to go to school, like K through high school graduation,
Mhm.
than to not go to school.
Nothing in me says yes to that.
Really?
I have no
Okay.
idea
Well,
whether
then
that's true or not.
that's interesting because
I just have no idea whether that's true or not.
yeah. Well, I don't know if it's true or not
Mhm.
either,
Mhm.
but I think it's something that we should make a decision on as people, individuals. I think
Uh-huh.
we should. I don't think that's something that a decision. Like I don't think that's a thought that we should leave unaddressed. As soon as one realizes that they don't have a decision for that, I think it behooves you to stop and make that decision.
So you mean like very concrete, like public education, whether we should have like
No,
mandatory
just education. Should you
Well, what is
should you
that?
educate? Should you learn?
Should you learn? It depends on what you learn.
Well, then I would disagree with that. I would say learning anything is better than learning nothing.
If you learn to hate, I don't think you should.
But I would say it's better to learn to hate than to learn nothing.
Can you learn to hate? That would be my
Sure, I
question.
think we do learn to hate.
And I think a lot of people learn nothing. And I think the people that learn to hate probably live better lives than people that learn nothing.
And again, nothing in me sort of resonates with that. It just
Yeah.
doesn't. I hear those words, but they sort of mean
Right.
nothing to me.
Well,
Which is that doesn't end the conversation. That's the
Yeah.
beginning of a conversation.
Right,
so when
right.
I say
I'm
means
going
nothing to
in my
me.
mind. I'm going back. I'm going. Let's
Yeah,
go back
okay.
to learning.
okay,
Maybe hate isn't. Maybe we shouldn't associate learning with hate right off the bat. Maybe that's a bad first association.
Well, we
I guess
don't.
that would be where I would go.
I would say we don't normally, but I could definitely understand where we could teach someone to hate a certain thing.
But why make that assumption first?
Why
Why not assume the best? Right? Like if you're gonna take, so let's go to the Bible, and someone's gonna learn the Bible. So you have two. At the fork in the road is two options.
Mm-hmm.
One is that you just start teaching the Bible hardcore. You make them learn it, right? The second is you start by deciding whether, like discussing the Bible, just determining its meaning, its validity.
Mhm.
You get caught up in this like paralysis of analysis. You get caught up
Mhm.
in this like, and so meanwhile the child's now now he's 1. Now he's 2nd grade. Now he's 3rd grade. And you're how long does it take you to figure out? Then you decide, okay, the Bible wasn't a good idea. We actually decided this. But by now the kid is, in 5th grade and, you're not teaching him anything. I don't know if that
Well,
makes
didn't
sense.
he have the
but-
whole journey of it? Well, I guess he was just. He said it was not determined. He was paralyzed for 5 years until something clicked and it worked out. Is that right? Is that how you were
Yeah, I
explaining
guess
it?
he was left up to his own devices.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that journey can also be important to some
But
people.
it can be important. That's what I'm arguing, is that journey is important, but it's not as good as somebody
Who tells
just-
you what to think?
yeah.
I think that's what Peterson's fighting against. You just don't. You
I think
can't.
that's what Peterson fighting
You can't
for.
just can't say everyone read the Bible, it's fact. No, we need a group of individuals that can look at the Bible and the Quran and the Buddhist things, look at all of them, make decisions for themselves. Because when the police officers, the Polish police officers, I forgot what book he references, but he talks about we need to be able to make decisions for ourselves. So when authority
But you're making two
tells
different
us
arguments.
well, the authority tells us to do something, we need to be strong, independently think for ourselves and say, no, I think that's wrong, so I'm not going to do it.
So then to steal from Arthur, that what you just said doesn't mean anything to me, because to me it seems like you're crossing your signals.
Okay, why do you think I'm crossing my signals?
Well, because there's a difference between learning to think for yourself and practicing obedience. And some people think obedience is wrong, but obedience is actually right. And that's the signals you're crossing, because it's nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
I think obedience
you mean
can be
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just had the word can.
No,
be.
it is right. It's necessary for life.
Well, it's
like sacrifice.
It's a tool, but you don't want to always be obedient. There are times where you
That's
need to
right.
be not obedient.
But you can't choose whether or not to be obedient if you aren't first obedient. The person who's not obedient first doesn't have the ability to exercise discretion.
You're using obedience like self-control, right? If you're not obedient yourself, how can you execute any of your will?
I'm using obedience like someone who would just throw themselves wholeheartedly into learning the Bible. Like this person is going to set up a disciplinary plan for you to learn the Bible.
Wouldn't maybe a less polemical or a better way to say that be humility instead of obedience? I mean, it's like, I think humility is probably good in the sense that you don't assume you know better than anybody else, or like a child who just assumes he knows better than his parents is not humble.
Yeah.
I see more value in that than obedience.
Well, I would say humility is the entrance condition to obedience.
It is, and so they're separate things, and obedience is less good in the sense that it's often not good and sometimes good. Whereas humility is sort of more often and maybe even always good.
But if you want to say it like that, then the times when obedience is not good doesn't outweigh the destruction it causes in the individual or the society by not making someone obedient.
I have no sense whether that's true or not. I mean, to me, it's like I wouldn't know how to weigh that out. I mean, my tendency would be disagree with that strongly, saying that obedience probably causes far more evil than disobedience, but I don't know.
Well, I would say the lack of obedience. It's like discipline. You know, should that be? Everyone needs discipline. Can we agree to that? Everyone should be disciplined.
No.
All right, there you
I think
go.
we're offline anyways right now.
Yourself, but first you have to be obedient and disciplined by someone else. If you're going to be great. I mean, if you're going to be a good artist, if you're going to do truly amazing things.
No, you do not need, like Picasso. I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but you take any.
Well, Picasso's
I'm sure there are
because he was very obedient.
There are specific artists that did not have anyone to learn from. They learned it all on their own.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need for an external forcing factor.
Well, okay, that's interesting. It's very nihilistic. It's very. You know, it's very like we are the center.
I mean, that's like the American dream is someone kind of starts from nothing and turns into something, right? They work in their garage and they gather people together and they turn it around. It's not like, oh, I worked at Dell and then I went and did the same thing Dell did later. I guess it's part of some of those stories.
That's true. Well, I mean, that's, you know, the 10,000 hour rule. Have you read, what's that book by Malcolm Gladwell?
Blink.
Have you read that one?
I started to. I never finished it.
Well, that kind of goes into his whole thesis for that book is that that never happens. What you're saying never happens. Those people always have. Steven Spielberg, you know, was on the lot when he was 7.
Yeah, so
10,000
hours are put in, but necessarily doesn't mean that they were obedient to someone for those 10,000 hours.
But they didn't give up, you know.
Yes, and that's self. That's, again, there's no external factor forcing them to do that for 10,000 hours. There was no external authority
but they
were being obedient
to. But there was. Well, so Steven Spielberg wouldn't work for that one either.
I'm interested in what's driving both of you at this moment. So you're pushing back against the word obedience and you're pushing the word obedience. So kind of going back to the nonviolent communication thing. So what's behind it? What do you need there?
Right.
Well, he was trying to make some assertions.
No, I'm asking him what he needs from that.
What do I need? I need I guess what I'm thinking.
Need or want.
Right. I'm trying to. Yeah, what I want is to, to me it's a sticking point because to me it's a bad idea to avoid obedience.
But listen, why? What is it? What is it that's deep under that? What do you want? Why do you even want to say that?
Because it causes suffering.
So so suffering is not a need. So you want
Yeah, I guess I want to prevent other people from suffering.
So security, you want security maybe?
Yeah.
And non-suffering.
Security for other
whatever.
people. Yeah, I want other people not to suffer. Yeah.
Protection, security, protection.
Yeah, I want other people
Soldiers
to be
suffer all the
protected.
time for their obedience, though.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're directly linked.
Yeah, but they're meeting the need to protect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So-
that's sacrifice.
So how about you though? So now let's ask you the same question. So what's driving?
Well,
you to
he was
resist?
making an assertion to a greater point, and I think there was a foundational problem with that, and that's what I was trying to shine some light on. Is I don't think that case is always true, so we don't need to argue about the end case. We can focus on this point here.
You're evading. So
Okay, evading what? I don't
what-
think that was true, and I don't think it's the right word he's trying to do, because I think, like I said, I think it has to do with more about self-discipline, and I can think plenty of examples where you don't have to be obedient to an authoritative force.
So what So you don't like the word obedience. So you have these feelings coming up, right?
I
So
don't know that, because I've gone on plenty of rants of why discipline's great.
but I'm talking. It said the word obedience.
Well, it's coupled with external. I think that's where I'm more important with the authority.
Because what do you want? What's driving that resistance to that word? What do you want?
What do I want? I want a world where there can be a personality type that needs obedience and a personality type that doesn't need obedience.
So
I want those to exist at the same
you want
time.
every individual to have their needs met. Every individual.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I want us to be open to the fact that it's obedience is very good too. Discipline's great for certain situations, but not
Mhm.
everything.
Mm-hmm. So you want the variety, the fact that people are different. You want that to be seen and recognized and acknowledged, so that people can be different and flourish differently.
Mm-hmm. I think we always get into a problem of one size fits all, and then we have misprescribed solutions. But it's if we can see the world a higher resolution and have different tools for different problems, and then the discussion becomes when do we use which tool in which case. Like there are a time and place for discipline and obedience, absolutely, but I don't think it's all the time.
Mm-hmm. So we just and that's what usually happens in these kind of conversations. That
Wait, hold on. That was profound.
Yeah.
I think we missed it.
No,
we
I'm
want the
good.
same thing.
I was just getting to that.
Yeah.
So we had, his desire for people to be protected, protection, security, and non-suffering, and yours are sort of more individual flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
And chances are you both like both of those
Yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm.
But because those were slightly different values, you were arguing instead of just recognizing what's behind it, you kept fighting on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why nonviolent communication is pretty profound.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes it just saves a lot of useless energy on battling around words and different level.
Yeah,
Right.
but I don't think you always discuss, especially in a debate, what your agreement on. Even though we probably should steel man a bit more, but it can be perceived as unnecessary because it's obvious we both agree on that to a certain degree. So it's tough whether
this is something
it needs
that
to be
I've
included
been
or not.
like right now. This is something that I've been kind of hinting around. I mean, more online, but it's that I think what the intention is with the nonviolent communication is that right now the way we're feeling the idea of continuing to steelman our ideas, we're not in a productive frame of mind, and so we're not actually going to be steelmanning our ideas.
Right.
We're going to be doing something different.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get us that resolution that we both seek.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the idea. That's what we need to do, So I mean, just to be frank, it sounds like there's still something kind of like gnawing at you a little bit. So it seems like we need. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Is we still need to unpack some stuff.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's all new to me. You made this assertion the first time I heard it. I was just questioning it, and the conversation on the way style.
No, but you weren't just. It's not that you were just questioning it. Something within you arose and resisted it. So, and that's what's and one expression nonviolent communication uses a lot is what's alive in you.
Passionate about.
Yeah. That's whatever is alive in you is what's actually happening at the moment, and so it's better to keep going back in to find out what that is.
Well, as well as in live me, I work with a lot of artists, so I know that.
Like your wife.
Yeah. Yes, though I know that example to be very clearly not true.
So then you feel like I'm attacking them.
No, I think you have, like I said, you made an assertion that I didn't find was correct or true. So I wanted you to understand there might be some rot in there.
But that see, even though I'm usually the one that's fighting for truth, and also within the nonviolent communication world, I'm the one that's fighting for the truth, right? So it's important to focus on the truth. But I think you just fell into the trap of truth seeking. It's not so much about whether what he said or not is true. It didn't meet your need for people to flourish differently. That's what was driving your so-called critique of the truth.
I was...
And that's, I think, what he was saying about steel manning. Steel manning is a kind of truth level thing. You know, you want to be truthful about what the other person says and be fair to them. But deeper than that is this level, about what's alive in the person that even matters. Because the facts don't matter. It kind of goes back to meaning and matter. We're aiming for the meaning level. What the person actually said or didn't say, and to some extent, doesn't matter. In a way, the truth, I'm exaggerating now because you know how important truth is, but in a way, the truth doesn't matter. Even though it's the most important thing. And, you know, it's kind of a paradox, but it's just, it's what's alive in you, what your needs are, that's the thing.
I was also very curious why he thought such. Because he might be able to completely change my position, and maybe I would have the worldview that everyone needs obedience. So that's another place where my question was coming from.
Yes, but it was over. But that couldn't be even seen because the other stuff was in the way. But as soon as like your needs are met and seen, you say, okay, that's what you want. Then all of a sudden, curiosity almost always is the automatic result, because you're not fighting to have your needs met. And then as soon as you say, okay, oh well, you know what I'm kind of needing here. Now it's very natural to then be curious about what the other person is really trying to say. So curiosity is usually what happens as a result.
No, I don't think that.
It was there in you, but it wasn't evident, and it wasn't being communicated because of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because of this very thing, that
the passion masked it.
One way to say it,
yeah.
Okay, well at least we're clear on that.
So I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to. I forget what you said. You said that I was like, no, but about your friends and making this assertion about I didn't mean to make such a strong assertion about obedience that would sort of call into question anybody's personal journey or anything like that. And I wasn't trying to say I wasn't, but what I was trying to do was I was just trying to like boldly say how I felt about obedience and just see if there was anything there within me. Like I haven't really thought about obedience out loud. So I'm wondering, should we right now kind of commit to, talking about obedience just with the idea of just kind of uncovering it and learning about it?
You obviously have strong feelings about it, so I'm definitely interested in what you think.
Well, I got strong feelings about it.
You asserted that. No.
You're an obedience fanatic, man.
Yeah. I'm an obedience.
You're a Marine.
Yeah.
That.
Exactly.
And that paints a horrible world to me.
The world of obedience.
Yes.
And yet, so that's it. For you, it does, and then for other people, it just opens up this beautiful glowing.
Oh yeah, and I can see how you think it is a tool, right? This is a tool that's going to elevate everyone. And me, I'm like, oh, that's an obstacle that's going to get everyone's way.
Right.
No, and like I said, I don't think it's. My case wasn't always obedience is bad either. I wasn't trying to say that, so that's kind of a straw man. I was just saying obedience is good in certain situations.
So if it was just Ryan and I right now, I would, or even just the three of us, we're kind of. I guess I would dive in and try to learn more about your position on obedience first. But I'm thinking, is there, with our purpose here of trying to just kind of get an idea about obedience or just get an idea of how we feel about obedience, I'm wondering if there's like a better way, or what should we do? Should we just share. I don't want to fall into the same trap.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't feel that passionately about it. I can, you know.
Yeah, like I said, I think we were exploring it fine, at least from my perspective. I didn't feel like we were going off the rails or anything there.
Okay, so how about this? How about let's just do a 1-on-1, like you. Why don't you just say how you feel about? Take a minute, say how you feel about obedience, and then I'll take a minute and say how I feel about obedience, and maybe it'll just be more like an exercise and
I don't even
getting out.
need a full minute. I mean, it's obedience a great tool, but sometimes it can also be an obstacle. That would be my position.
Yeah. So then I guess what I'm thinking about obedience just right now, and haven't put a lot of thought into this, but the first thing that comes to mind, because this is kind of a Jordan Peterson group, is that I thought I remember there being a part in the 12 Rules where he talked about, you know, like kids who go to religious schools, right? Because we're kind of talking about the Bible, so it ties in a little bit, and how he was saying, you know, that I forget how he came to it, but he was saying something similar. It's like, how do we know that it's good to teach the Bible? Because a lot of people ask him that, because he's always talking about the wisdom of the Bible, but he was saying that it's better to have like gone through a religious school and been obedient to the Bible, to the school, to the teachers, because then that person is a better tool for whatever is to be next.
Well, if you were saying if they were to go to religious school or no school, I'd absolutely say yes. Religious school would be better than no school. But I would have a hard time making that argument saying religious school versus a normal public school. I think that one's a lot harder.
Well, hold on, let me finish.
You did go to religious school.
I went to both. Yeah.
Let me finish my thought
Religious
here.
and public. Go ahead.
So then as I'm thinking about that, my point is that person being a tool is that obedience to a headmaster, right, is or to a discipline or to a doctrine, whatever, that in them builds the capacity. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is that you think about the person who doesn't have a strict education that way. You know, education is a metaphor, but it's like, to me it seems like it's easier afterwards. The person is like indoctrinated in this religion. It seems like it's easier for the person to get rid of that indoctrination, but to keep the mental muscles they built through obedience and apply those mental muscles in a new direction than the opposite, than the inverse of that.
Well,
so that's my kind of thinking on obedience.
I wouldn't say opposite, because it's like you're not going to go to an anti-Christian school and learn the opposite. It'd be like I said, comparing to like no school maybe, or
there are Satanist
teaching
schools.
something else in a different direction. Yeah.
Well, there's schools that do no homework now.
And what I heard in your explanation there, you said you have to be beholden to a headmaster. That made me think of Peterson and hierarchies, right? We're all belong to a hierarchy. There's always someone above us. It behooves us to learn how to participate in a hierarchy and understand there are people better and people worse than us. You know, we're involved in this community, and we need to learn how to, I guess, be obedient to the people that are above us.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, but we need to learn how to operate in a hierarchy. At least I'm in agreement up to that point. Like, there's going to be headmasters in our lives. We're going to have to learn how to deal with headmasters in our life. Should we always be obedient? I don't know. Depends. That would be my answer.
So the answer is no.
Not always.
Yeah, right. Your question was,
But
should we always? The answer is no.
But the answer isn't always be disobedient
No.
to him either. So I'm just trying to be precise.
And I agree with that. I don't believe it. I'm not saying blind obedience, you know, but I'm saying that, you know, like blind obedience, I guess, would be like 100% obedient, and then I don't know what 0% obedient would be. But what I'm saying, I guess maybe to be more refined, what I'm saying is that anything you do, you should start with 100% obedience. If you decide to do something, then that's what I would say. Like you should be 100% obedient to your boss until he gives you a reason not to.
Okay, let me put it to my own labels on it to see if maybe these are more accurate or high resolution or just absolute garbage. I want to give people default trust. Like my boss, my brand new boss I know nothing about, I want to trust him. I want to give him that initial default trust so he can do the same with me initially, because I want the world to be trustworthy and best work. However, respect is earned over time, and respect can be lost. So it's a default position, but it can change rapidly. Like to have trust is one thing, but to have respect starts at zero and it takes time to build. So no one is like deserving of like default respect, so to speak. And I think that goes with like, you could take that as like loyalty too, right? You kind of want to trust your boss, but you don't have loyalty. Loyalty takes time to, or should take time to build, because it's supposed to be very hard to, if you're loyal, you're going to be obedient, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're defaultly obedient, I don't know. Maybe there isn't no problems if by defaultly obedient, because you're taking everything on a case by case basis. I think as long as you're taking other input in, like you said, if you're not talking about always be obedient, which I thought was your initial position, which you just clarified is not. We're probably closer than we think.
Yeah.
I think a better word, kind of like instead of obedience, humility. I think a better word is cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
So the word I'm aiming for is cooperative, not obedient. And so you can have cooperative hierarchies, but not hierarchies of power over other people. So that's also the world I'm aiming for. A world without any kind of hierarchy that has one person with actual power over anybody else. I mean, that as an ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So cooperative and no power over.
Yeah, I feel it's just the label, really. Like, I think obedience, in my mind, the definition has such a strong definition. But if you change it
Because
to
we're coming from like 10,000 years of history of some pretty top-heavy hierarchies. We've had dictatorship for 10,000 years.
As the primary governance system.
Almost the only government system until basically 1776, right? Or before that, actually. But yeah. So.
Only just.
Yeah, I think
in history we're just starting this different phase of not. You could call it anti-authoritarian, but then that becomes its own problematic way of looking at it. That's the negative. The positive is cooperative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely like cooperative. I mean, it's like democracy and republic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more democracy side, less from the republic side. Should we call it there, folks?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties, and it looked like we lost again.